We'll pick up again in the main menu, and where I would normally go through instant action missions and campaigns to have a look at what's available, since this is pre-release, I'm going to hold off on that until after the release and just pick that up at the end. They're in work, but, well, it's kind of hard to build a mission unless the aircraft is up to speed. The same goes for the training missions, although a lot of these are already done, and they are going to be voiced, the fully interactive missions that are normal in a DCS module. And really, the only other thing to look at this point is I'll just go to the mission editor and see some of the special options that are available to the Viggen. And I just built this mission very quickly just to have something to fly during this phase, but I'll look at some of the tabs up here on the editor first. And we have the wide array of weapons options like I touched on in that first video available here. I've modified one of the loadouts to take up on this mission. I'm going to go with the rocket pods plus an ECM pod and chaff and flare dispenser. In fact, I'm going to go with a more advanced ECM pod while I'm at it right here, the U-22A, and see how that performs. We're going to have the standard array of failures that can be introduced into a mission if the designer so chooses. And then we have a tab to go to set frequencies on the radio. So these will be presets that we'll select to get us talking to the right people. My flight's on 127, that'll be button 1, but we'll see more about that once we get into the cockpit. And then the last tab allows for some different targeting options on the anti-shipping missiles. And I don't think this is the final version. I think with the next update to DCS World, more options are going to be up here to allow us to place, in addition to waypoints like I already have down, mark points on the map that are going to allow us to do some different things when it comes to targeting and navigation. What those different things are, I'm not exactly sure at this point, so that's really what this mission is all about. So what I'm going to do is do a ramp start at Mozdok. I intend to fly to waypoint 1. I'm going to take a visual navigation mark right there over that bridge, just to give the navigation system an update. I'm going to attempt to do a radar navigation update right there where the river enters the lake. And I'll probably overfly that location as well and just get one more nav update, and we'll see what that's all about and how to do it once I get into the mission. And then I have a target for us, and I'm going to try to take out a communication station right here with some rockets. And I took myself a recon photo as I was building the mission. That's going to be the station right there from more or less the angle that I'm going to roll in from, so just on the other side of the town. And if all goes well, if I keep my nav system nice and updated, I should have a marker in the HUD right over that location. And then I just need to follow the steps to get those rockets on target. And I have some just miscellaneous air defenses out here just to see what the RWR looks like and to see what functions the jammer and the countermeasures take. There are going to be a lot of automatic modes I can have it in, and I'll play around with it en route as well. So after hitting that target, I'm just going to egress out to steer point 4 and turn left. In fact, I'm trying as I go here to keep this flight path as simple as possible. In fact, I don't really need that steer point. I just know that I'm going to come up here and then turn left, and that's going to put me on one more leg out to Nauchik for another nav fix, and then I'm going to fly the full TILS approach into Mozdok and see what that system's all about. So I'm trying to pack in a lot here, and if I get to everything, I get to everything. If I don't, I don't. Now, let's talk a little bit about mission planning when it comes to ground attack. There's going to be a lot more to this than we're used to in other aircraft, because I have the location right here, and if I do everything right, the aircraft is going to steer me to this location. What I have to do on my end is make sure that I'm feeding the right target altitude into the aircraft so that it can, and I'll bring up a visual aid here, solve this side of the triangle. That's going to give it the target range, which in the end is the most important aspect of weapons delivery, because if it underestimates the range, the bombs or rockets or whatever are going to fall short. If it underestimates the range, everything is going to fall along. And you can see that if that target elevation is off, then that range is going to be off as well. And initially, before we roll in on this target and get the radar providing that range information to us, the only way the aircraft, and therefore we, are going to know where the target is just coordinates on the ground and then elevation. And I think you see the point now. If the elevation is off, then every aspect of the targeting is going to be off as well at that point. Now, if I mouse over this location on the map, we can see down at the bottom right here, 2,070 feet. And if I come back to the field, my starting elevation is going to be 502 feet. So what's going to happen is I'm going to set my altimeter so that at the airfield it reads 0. I'm going to get airborne and start to navigate initially in that way, and then before I get to steer point 3 and the target, I need to reset my altimeter so that it's reading 0 at the target, because the barometric altitude is what the fire control system is going to base the guidance it provides to us on. And I know you're probably thinking, well, what about the radar altimeter? Why isn't that going to update the system? And you can see the problem with that. All this different terrain out here, it varies in elevation hundreds of feet before we get to here. So even if the radar altimeter were updating that target elevation, it's not going to be valid data that's fed into the system. So luckily, the developers have helped us out with that, and on the kneeboard, once we get into the cockpit, we're going to have the proper QFE setting to dial into the altimeter to get that target altitude at 0 once we're in the area. I can't emphasize enough how important that's going to be. Now, one more very, very important consideration here is going to be to get the time on target for the target location correct. And this might end up not being the way to do it, but I'm going to, for steer point 3, you can see how it says ETA 1021. That's going to be based on getting airborne immediately and then flying the route at the assigned airspeeds. I want to give myself about 20 minutes time on the ground to be able to fly the route at the airspeeds that I've designated. So what I'm going to do is uncheck right there where it says ground speed. I'm going to check ETA, and I'm going to bump that ETA 20 minutes. So instead of 1021, I'm going to make that 1041. And by having that checkbox checked, now all the calculations done by the nav system to get me to that location on time are going to be based on that time on target. And I think this is going to work. I'm not sure exactly how it's intended to be done here, but we'll see what that does to the navigation system. And I think that's going to set us up exactly the way that we need to be. Okay, let me get into the cockpit. I'll run through this mission and we'll see exactly how much I can fit in here. I'll be right back. Unpaused on the ramp at Mozdok, and I usually at this point do an aircraft walk around just to get familiar with the overall layout. I am not set up to record in VR. I also, when I walk around, like to actually walk around the aircraft, so I'm going to defer that to later. And there's just so much systems and aircraft function-wise to learn that I'm just going to put off doing my normal aircraft maintainer stuff until the end. After all, a lot of the stuff that I get into in these test flights is actually kind of beyond what a pilot would be concerned with in either case. Now, let me pull up the procedure, and I have this pulled straight from the manual that comes from DCS. It's just part of the manual that I have set up as a separate document here so I can switch back and forth easily. And to get this up, I start DCS with these PDFs open, and then I just Alt-Tab out to here. So it's just switching back and forth from DCS, Alt-Tab out to PDF, which works very, very well. The only catch is that in this setup, I can't really control anything in the aircraft to include flight control. So it's a good setup, but it does have one little drawback there. Okay, so let's go through the normal startup with ground power, and I'm going to go ahead and call the crew chief. Let's go ground crew.
Chief, turn on the ground power. Copy.
And this is going to provide electrical power to basically the entire aircraft system, just as if the engine generator were running. If I did a battery start, I'd only have DC power and I wouldn't have as much functionality until I get the engine running. And yeah, we can hear some of the components start to spool up, and that's a kind of a neat sound there. And you'd be surprised, well, a lot of you know this, but aircraft with just electrical power on are louder than you would expect, just due to all the little gizmos inside that are running, quite loud in a few cases. Okay, so procedure. Ejection seat safe, trigger safety safe, park and brake on. So seat safe, and it's this little handle right back here. If I wanted to arm it, I would just click it and it would come inboard and just be over my head. That's good to go. Trigger is safe. Parking brake, I'm going to depress my toe brakes and pull the switch. Now my parking brake is set. Okay, we'll take that as good. Data cartridge insert, main power on, low pressure fuel valve on. So let me get the data cartridge, and to do that, okay, there we go. I just click back here. Is it click once? Yeah, you just click right there in the slot and the data cartridge goes in. Next step was going to be main power and then low pressure fuel valve. Okay, that's main power. So that gets me power onto the system. And then low pressure fuel valve on, light off. And this little light is just advisory telling me that I either have the low pressure fuel valve off or the afterburner fuel valve. Yeah, I think it's that one off. Yeah, so I have to get both of these on, and then the advisory light goes off. Okay, I'll take that. Now let's go for master caution, cancel alarm, already got it. Cockpit illumination, yeah, I already preset that with floodlights and some illumination on, and those are controlled right back here with these dials, potentiometers. Okay, let's go for master mode selector, verify in BER. It is in BER, just the startup, sort of warm up setting. Landing gear lever, out, or in other words, down, and that's right here, followed by auto throttle lever right there, which is in the off position, up. Throttle to ground idle, check that the throttle catch, click the throttle catch on the left, opens the high pressure fuel valve. Okay, let me click away, I'll click on that. Okay, throttle comes out of the, I guess, sort of cutoff position. Yeah, there we go, we have like a little detent right there. That's ground idle. Past the detent is sort of flight idle. And then all the way up to the afterburner detent. And we get nice little, it's nice to have the clicks right there, especially good, clear, audible indications of those detents. Because that is important as you're flying around, not to have to look down there to tell exactly where you're at. Okay, let's go for landing light off, emergency lights off, and those are switches up here. These for now are work in progress. That's cool. Okay, check backup instrument illumination, and I'm going to take that as good. Check warning panel lights. Press and hold the warning panel test button, and I'm going to check basically just as a standard lights test here. So, yeah, buttons right there, lights on. All but two, I guess, caution and warning lights are on. Those are probably just empty slots right there that don't actually have a function. Okay, warning is, tone is audible. I might have to turn that down in editing. Okay, I think I'll take that as good. All the lights that I think should be on are on. I've got all the caution and warning on. And then it was going to tell me that if pitch gear warning is lit, engine start is still allowed, and this should disappear during the engine start. And that's... let me see which one that is. I'll be right back. Okay, that's left panel, top right light. That was just advisory telling me that I could press on if that one was lit. Roll trim, check and center. And we have a roll center button right here. I'm not going to touch trim just because I don't know enough about the system to tell if I'm good for takeoff or not. Okay, I would just click that button. I believe that would center me back up if I had performed the actual check there. Okay, generator on. Autopilot yaw correction to 0. Yaw trim, check and center. Okay, so generator is going to be right here. Generator is on. Yaw trim, check and set to 0. That's this little dial right here with the sort of transparent cover. I'm going to take that's good, and I'm also going to dispense with the yaw trim check. And I think those checks will be with the emergency yaw trim or emergency roll trim. Because right now, without hydraulic pressure on the aircraft, I don't think the trim function actually works in the first place. Or I guess I should say the normal trim function, so... FR24 radio, normal and guard position, ensures that the normal radio function and backup radio is available to monitor the guard frequency. Okay, I have that nailed down to right here, right there in the normal guard position. That's exactly where it starts, and I'm going to leave that one alone for now. Radar illumination strength, middle position, and that's going to be a dial. Yeah, right here. I'm going to leave that alone for now. I'll adjust that if I need it once I get the radar up and running. Mil bank or flight recorder, set to desired position, and that's just forward of the... yeah, that one took me a while, but yeah, it is right there, just forward of the stuff we were just playing with. And I'm starting to see the sequence. I think it starts us back left and works our way around in sequence. That's the way that I would prefer to do it. And procedures like this, I don't care what the procedure is. I'm going to deviate from it unless it makes the procedure unsafe. So if it's convenient to do things out of order, it's, in most cases, when it comes to checklists, military-type checklists like this, cool as long as you're not invalidating some safety feature or doing something that could potentially cause damage. So I like the flow that's going here so far. Okay, HUD reflector glass set to the lower setting, and this allows me to see in the HUD more stuff on takeoff. We saw this when I landed. Okay, that is down right now. HUD slave switch off, or in the F position. So I need to go off on that switch. That's now configured for startup. Altitude source selector. LD sets altitude information in HUD and radar display to use barometric altitude. So right now it's in the RHM radar position. LD gives me barometric references. RHM gives me radar references. I'll go with LD for now. I think that's the intent there, and then if I need to go to radar, I think I will pretty much immediately after takeoff. I'll switch that over and we'll see the different indications that gives us in the HUD and on the radar display. Backup artificial horizon, fast direct. Backup altimeter, reset and check that it's at the QFE setting, and backup course indicator, fast direct by pressing the button on the instrument. Indicator lights turn off when completed. Okay, so let's go for attitude indicator. Okay, that's pressed and that's configured. Okay, backup, altimeter. Just going to rotate the dial until this is set to 0. That's that QFE setting I was talking about. So now the index right there is assuming that the field elevation is at 0 and everything's going to be based off of that. And we'll get the main altimeter here in just a second. Engine pressure ratio should be about 1.0. Okay, that's right there, and that's just a delta between, or a differential between, I think it's gas generator intake and exhaust. So it's going to tell me in general terms how much thrust is being produced. Fuel indicator check, and should deviate a maximum of either plus or minus 5% from 106 or 131 with a fuel load or with an external tank. So in other words, okay, and I just double checked. I sure thought that I configured this aircraft with an external tank, but no, I didn't. I changed loadouts at the last second. I think I'm still going to be good on fuel, but yeah, it should be without the external tank 106 plus or minus 5%. It's down a little bit, but I'll take that as being within the limits that I would expect, for my purposes at least. KB countermeasures pod and APP-27 radar warning receiver set to the desired positions. Now these I'm going to leave until I get airborne, then I'm going to configure those if I get to them. I've got so much packed into this one mission here, I'm going to run out of time, I know it. Exterior lighting to the desired settings. Now I've got switches back here for anti-collision light. I'll go ahead and turn that on. I have two different settings for, what would you be? You would be navigation lights. I think it's full and half intensity. I'm just going to leave it to the left, and you'll be able to see, I think, in external views what all this is doing. Formation lights on and off. I'll leave them on, but I think that's a good setup for me for engine start. It's the setup that I want in either case. IFF system, desired setting, normally on and set to the correct IFF setting. And okay, I've got the switch on, although this isn't really going to do anything for us, but I'll take that as good. Course correction, check and set local magnetic declination. Now that's going to be a dial right down here, protected by a transparent cover. I don't think I want to touch this. I think it's already going to be preset to 6 degrees or whatever. If we run into problems en route, then I know that I need to pay more attention to that. I don't think we will, though. Windshield canopy defog off. Now that's going to be just right here, a dial, and that is in the, it looks like the off position to me. TILS selector in mode A for automatic, and that is in mode A. Radar altimeter verify on, that switch is on. Weapon selector desired position, release mode as desired, target mode selector as desired, circuit breakers confirmed in, and then we get into data input. Okay, so for the attack I'm going to make, I need to, oddly enough, be in the attack position. For these rockets, the dial right here I don't believe is going to have any function for rockets. I'll find out en route once I go into the manual. We have a switch right here for series and impulse, so either salvoing everything off or picking off one at a time. I think no matter what I have this set to, it's going to fire all the rockets at one time. We'll find out once we do it, but I'm going to leave that in series in either case. And that is good config. It also told me verify circuit breakers in, and they are indeed in. Okay, and then data input. Load the data cartridge and input any necessary data. Oxygen system on. So let me go ahead and get the oxygen system on, and then we'll start to dig into this data input. And I was originally going to give myself 20 minutes. I fully intended to make that 20-minute takeoff time. I'm not going to do it, though. I'm going to, once I get through the startup, restart the mission so I can make the time on target. But let me go through the data load, and if I scroll down in the procedures, we have a separate section for data input. So this is where we're going to start. Now, since this is a natural stopping point, both in terms of mission flow and my editing efforts for the day, I am done. I'm going to put a pause in here and come back tomorrow with the data load, which is actually way simpler than I thought it was at this point. And then the remainder of the startup is basically just hitting the start switch, doing a flight control check, and taxiing out. We'll cover a lot of stuff in this mission, as you'll see, and then get into some more and more weapons. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.